I'm a retired accountant. I didn't write anything longer than an email from sophomore year of college till about 5 or 6 years ago. And but I always liked to read. I liked histories and mysteries. So I read the old Perry Masons, remember, with Raymond Burr on TV? So I read those as a kid. Actually, I got in trouble with the librarian because she was like, oh my God, this kid's 12 years old, he's reading this stuff. And my dad was like, he's fine, just don't worry about it. But that, and like Sherlock Holmes, I just love to read stuff. Like Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose about Lewis and Clark. I've read that like 2 or 3 times. Anyway, so I'd never really written anything. About 10 years ago, I tried writing a book, and I got to like 80 pages, and I got stuck. I didn't know what to do, and I just put it aside. I don't even know if I have it anymore. But I was working down in Connecticut in my last job, and I was staying down there during the week, so I had a lot of time, and I was getting close to retirement. And I'm like, so, what am I going to do in retirement? I can only play golf so much. I have a plate in my back, so, I can't play all the time. And so I started thinking about, I was an accounting teacher, and I would tell stories about frauds. And my classes loved them. Like, instead of debits and credits, I'd sprinkle in a story, and they'd be, oh, that's a really cool story. So I got to think, well, maybe I could go to places like this and give a speech about fraud. But I didn't have enough stories. I wasn't like an FBI agent. I just had a couple. So I was like, well, that's no good. So I started thinking about, well, maybe, I could write a book. And so I sort of had to start putting it together, and eventually I got it there. So I've written 3. And this one is because a friend of mine who read my first book said, oh, I really like this one character. You got to have a book for him. So I looked for the biggest theft in Boston, because it's easier to write what you can know and you can see. And I've been in Boston since freshman year of college. I grew up in New Jersey. So I picked the Gardener theft. It's like, everybody knows that. It's not solved. So I put my guy in it, and he solves it, and he gets the paintings at the end and all that. So it works out very well. So the same guy who said I should write a book sent me an email, and he said, Bob, I've booked you at the Gardner, Massachusetts, not the Isabella Gardner. He said, I've booked you at the Gardner, Massachusetts Museum in 3 weeks, and you're giving a presentation on the theft. So you better have a slide presentation. So I did this. And so that's what this has become, with a few iterations along the way. So that's what this is going to be about. It's not my book. This is about the theft and all of that. So
it's all fact, right?
As much as I can tell. My book is made up, but as much as I can make this factual, this is factual. Okay? So I would like you all to relax and close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Well, I can do that.
You can all do, well, there's usually a few people who just don't like to do it, and they keep peeking at me. So I'd like you to close your eyes and relax. And I want you to pretend that you're hovering over the city of Boston, a bird's eye view. And below you is a brown rectangle building. It has a big skylight in the middle. In front of it is the Boston Fens. Up to the right is the Museum of Fine Arts. A little bit past that is Huntington Avenue and Northeastern University. To the left is Kenmore Square with the Citgo sign. A little to the left of that is Fenway Park. Straight ahead is Sturrow Drive, the Charles River, and then across the river. It's the end of March 1990. The building you're looking down on is the Isabella Gardener Stewart Museum. It's a little past midnight. There's a road to the left of the building. The road's sort of dimly lit. There's a few street lights, but they're amber colored, so you can't see very well. On the side of the building is a small vestibule that juts out from the building. About 150 feet away from the fens, there's a car, a Dodge hatchback, sitting idling with 2 men in it. One's a little bit taller than the other. So it's about 1 a.m. All of a sudden, the door to that vestibule opens up. Light flashes out. then the door shuts and the light's gone. The men don't know what's going on. They stay in their car. A couple of minutes later, they hear people singing St. Patrick's Day songs. It's an hour after St. Patrick's Day ended. People have been out drinking. It's two couples. The girls are on the guy's shoulder. They're playing chicken fighting. Coming up the road, they've been drinking a lot. They fall over right near where the car is. They look in. They can see on the left shoulder a patch that says Boston Police Department. Oh my God, we're underage. We're going to get busted. So they scamper away. The men sit in the car. At about 1:20, the driver puts the car in gear and slowly glides the 150 feet up to the side entrance and stops. The two men get out. They're in full Boston police officer uniforms. They have the pointed hats. They go up to the side vestibule and hit a buzzer. Hey, we want to come in. We hear there's a disturbance. Somebody inside lets them in. Now they're in a clear glass enclosure. They flash their badges. The guy inside lets them in again. Hey, come over here. We want to talk to you. The security guard comes from behind the desk. They slam him up against a wall, pull his wallet out. We know who you are. We know where you live. You better not tell anybody about what is going to happen. This is a robbery. They say, where's the other guard? Oh, he's off on his rounds. Call him. So they give him his walkie-talkie. He gets the other guard down there. They smash him up against a wall. Do the same thing to him. Threaten him. They take the two cops take the two security guards down to the basement. They put one at one end of the basement and one at the other end. They duct tape them, handcuff them. The men can't see each other. This has taken about 20 minutes. The cops are not in any great rush. For the next hour, they go up to the second floor, the Dutch room, and take paintings and other objects. They go down the hall to the short gallery and take a few more. They're going back and forth, back and forth. At about 2:35, they make their way downstairs to the basement, make sure the people are still tied up. At 2:40, they make two exits from the gardener to their car and load in the 13 items they've taken. At 2:45, the car slides up the road, Palace Road, turns right at the Fens, goes around the Fens, goes to Sturo Drive, and gone. So you can open your eyes now. That's the theft. I'm going to tell you a lot more, but that's what happened. Two guys in police uniforms sat in a car, drove up to the side, knocked their way in, somehow were let in, tied the guards up, went to the different rooms, took everything, vanished. Nothing's been seen since. One item, that's it. So this is a picture of what the room looked like afterwards. Just to show you that the two cops who were going through the gardener had no regard for what they were looking at. I mean, you can see, everything's just torn apart, thrown. It's not like they were sophisticated art lovers. They were trying to get some pieces. That's all me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Isabella. She's a very interesting woman, how she created her museum, because it took a lot. I'll go through what was taken. Then there's some really interesting stories. There were people who tried to get into the museum before that. There were people who tried to get into the MFA, Museum of Fine Arts, ahead of that. The theft was 81 minutes. So again, this was not a slam, get in, get out kind of thing. These guys knew they had all the time in the world, and they took it. And then we know who did it. We know who the two guys were, but we don't know everything. And then where are the 13 items? So I'll talk a little bit about Isabella and her museum and where it is and why it was able to be robbed. This is a world-class museum. And these guys robbed it with no trouble at all. It's not like the cops showed up, the FBI, nobody showed up. So why were they able to do that? And unfortunately, it's tied to Isabella, that she put some restrictions on the museum that made it hard to keep it in good shape. So here's a picture of Isabella as a young girl. About a month ago, my wife and I went to the museum. They had a presentation on Isabella and her managing of her image. So she had very few photos taken of herself, but lots of paintings and sketches. And she did that so she could dictate what she looked like to people, because that mattered to her a whole lot. So here's the famous painting that's in the Gardener right now, and you can see, that doesn't look exactly like what she looked like. I'm just, the artist took, but I mean, it was John Singer Sargent. He knew what he was doing, but he was trying to please who the painting was for. Then there's this famous painting, and that sketch by him, Anders Zorn. See these things here? Those are supposed to be diamonds on the end of like a tiara. So she had that made. She had a lot of money. And then here's a picture of her in her older age. So she wanted to look more like this and this and this than like this and this. But she managed that. There were very few photos of her. So here's another item of her where she's in theater. Boston Globe said she's walking a lion through a zoo on Boylston Street. Now, I've gone looking for everything I could find about where there was a zoo on Boylston Street, and I can't find it. But okay, the Globe put it in there, and that's what she said. So she was kind of a crazy woman for the time. We're talking about the age. Oh my God, she drank beer, she smoked cigarettes, she played backgammon, she drove her car fast. Oh my God, what a horrible person. But she was and here's what a friend of hers said. She's a millionaire bohemian. She's the leader of the smart set. She was a trendsetter. And so that's how she lived her life, which is part of how the museum got started. So I'll go through some of this. So she had a very wealthy father. She came from New York, married somebody who was wealthy. They had a son. Unfortunately, he passed early. Then she had a miscarriage. And after that, she and her husband decided to travel, mostly Europe, and collect art. And by art, I just don't mean paintings. If any of you have been to the Gardener, the whole building is what they collected. She collected floors, walls, ceilings, columns, everything you could think of. So it was very eclectic what she created. Her dad died and left her a bunch. Then her husband died and left her more of a bunch. So she's got a whole bunch of money, but they were already planning the museum, and so she just kept going on her own. And she's, there's pictures of her supervising the construction when it was going on and everything. The museum opened in 2003. It was free. And she lived, so it's a 4-story building. She lived on the 4th floor. If you go there now, the 4th floor is administrative buildings and several thousand items that no one will ever see. And there's a reason for that, which is Isabella. And then in 1924, she died, and she left $1.2 million to the museum. The problem is, $1.2 million is a lot, but not really. And here, so this is the building she and her husband owned before they did the museum. So this is on Beacon Street in Boston, down near the Public Garden. So first she owned this building, 151, but she filled that with stuff. So then they bought this one, and they filled that with stuff. So then she bought that one. So she had 3 of these side by side, and that was when they said, I think we better get another building. We're filling this thing up. So they did. And the Public Garden's just over that way. So here's, what the Gardener looks like there. So the Gardener, like I said, the building itself is part of the museum. It's not just what's on the walls or the manuscripts or all that stuff. The atrium you looks down on a gorgeous courtyard. I'll show you a picture. And here's what somebody said about her. If she ever had a lot of money, she would fill it with beautiful pictures and objects of art for people to enjoy. And that's what we've been able to do for over 100 years past when she was around. So there's the courtyard. And you see it's just stunning, right? You can see what she's taken. These are parts of buildings that she took. So the 4th floor is up there. This is the 2nd floor. Most of the theft was down here in the Dutch room. If you come this way and towards us, that's where the short gallery is. That's where a few other things were taken. But it's just stunning. You know, it looks like this all year round. It's just great to go to. You should really take the trip. So her vision for the Gardener came from trips that she took to Venice. So this building here was one of her inspirations. And this, and you can see, look at these things. This is almost exactly what she put in there, right? So she was buying all sorts of stuff and taking it with her. And this is the skylight that I was telling you about. So there's the 4th floor that she lived on, and there's the skylight. So just to give you some idea, you know, if you haven't been around Boston too much. So here's the Gardener. This is the Fens. Here's the MFA. Here's Northeastern and Huntington Avenue. Here's Fenway. Here's Kenmore Square. So out here is, you know, Sturrow Drive and the river. Oh, so I want you to there's a couple of things you have to remember. So I want you to remember that, Palace Road. So when I said there was a car parked on the side, that was this Palace Road. So it was parked here, and this is one way going this way. And that's important. Remember, one way going towards the fence. So just to give you another view of where the Gardener is. So there's the Fenway section of Boston. Uh-oh. Right? Everybody knows Whitey Bulger? So Whitey controlled South Boston, which was right next door. And there's another place I want you to remember, TRC Auto Electric. And that's in Dorchester. And you'll understand why it's important to remember that. So remember Palace Road, TRC Auto Electric, and the city of Revere. So you need to remember the city of Revere. And I'll just give a little backstory. So a friend of mine, a couple of friends, read my stuff before I put it out. And he was reading this one, and he said, and he's Italian, he said, you know, I have a cousin who's in the mafia. Do you want to talk to him? Absolutely. So we spent the afternoon with this guy, and he took me around. I wanted to see certain things, and you'll learn what. But I wanted to go see like where certain things happened. He showed me those. He showed me where all the mafia guys lived. He told me stories. It was a great afternoon, and a whole bunch of it's in the book. So researching this stuff was kind of fun. So this is what the Fenway looked when she bought her building. It was sort of on the outskirts, right? The MFA had only been built a few years before. So it was sort of not great looking, kind of swampy. I think this is called the Muddy River, if I remember right. It sort of meanders its way through, okay? But this is what it looked like after she was done. All right, so that's looking much better. There's another picture. And this is what it looks like today. So, you know, here's the facing here. So here's Palace Road. So that car came this way. Here's the front entrance. This is the new part back here. Okay? And here's the skylight, and here's the 4th floor that was her residence.
Where's the river?
The river's down this way. So this is facing the Fens. So the river's this way, and then Sturrow Drive and Charles River is out that way. Okay? So the real question is, why was this place able to be robbed? And unfortunately, and I'll go through this slower, you don't have to read everything. So I remember I said she gave $1.2 million to the museum, but they could only spend the income, not the principal. So if you think about it, like 5% of $1.2 million is only $60,000. That's not a lot of money to run a museum if you can't touch the 1.2. And she said, this yellow, if you touch anything, then you sell everything and give the money to Harvard, and you dissolve the museum. So when people ask, you know, why haven't some other paintings been put up in place of the ones who were stolen? Why are the frames back up? It's because of this. So that's why there's 2,500 items up on the 4th floor in her old residence, because they can't take them down. They can't use them. Every once in a while they'll do a little exhibit, and I guess they'll put some out, but that's it. Anything else would dissolve her will, sell the place, raise it, give the money to Harvard. So while she created the museum exactly how she wanted, she also put some operating restrictions on it that made it sort of hard to continue it. So the conditions at the Gardener were awful at this time. There were plastic sheets over the paintings. There were rubber mats on the floor. There was no AC or other, atmosphere controls. They had a camera. So remember I said the cops drove their car and parked. There was one camera that took pictures of that, but there was no backup. There was a security system with one button. So remember when I said they made the guards come out from behind their desk and slam them against the wall? That's because they knew the button was back there, and that button went to the Boston police, and that was the only connection. So once they took care of that, they knew, that's why they didn't care how long it took, because they knew nobody was coming in. The guards, you'll see what they look like, were untrained, minimum wage guys. There was no auto alarm. So normally if you're a security guard, you go around and you say, okay, I was at this site, you plug in your key, I was at this site, I was at this site. They didn't have that. And there was no backup alarm to go to the Boston police. If nobody moved around the museum for half an hour, you would think an alarm would go off. No alarms. The poor climate control and building maintenance was just horrible. And part of it was this, and part of it was the board at the time was not very good at fundraising. So they could have gone out and tried to raise money, but they never did it. So it just didn't work out. So let's go through what was taken. So there were 13 items, but they're sort of the big three. And this is the big one. The concert by Vermeer. She paid a little under $6,000 for it. It's worth, pick a number, $250 million. There's only like 30 or 34 Vermeers in the world. So pick a number what you think that's worth. Then there was this one by, Rembrandt. $100 million, I don't know, 200 million. Again, take a number. And then there's this one, which is the one I used for my cover, and another Rembrandt. And you can see what she paid for them. She only paid $5,600, $29,000, and $62,000. So, back when she was buying this stuff in the late 1800s, it was a lot, but it didn't cost that much. But look at how much she had, right? So she wasn't pinching pennies. So the Dutch room on the second floor is where most of the stuff was taken. And this is an earlier picture, and I'll show you a better one in a second. But over there is the lady and gentleman in black, but let's go to this picture, it's a little better. So this is really what it looked like. So this is the Sea of Galilee, this painting here. Here's the concert. On the back side of this, so they were sort of back to back like this, that's landscape with obelisk. See this little thing here? It's a Chinese vase. It's also called a gu or a ku. That was taken. So like you're taking a Vermeer and you're taking a cup. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But we'll see. And there's the lady and gentleman in black. So this is what it looked like before everything happened. And this is what it looked like after. So, I had that one picture in the beginning of what it looked like. And you just see, it's just devastation. They really didn't care. They were just ripping stuff off the walls, breaking the frames, breaking glass, doing everything. So this is the courtyard over here. This is the entrance to the tapestry room. They went in there once or twice, but didn't take anything. So what else was taken? So there were those big three, so then there were 10 more. So there was a portrait of the artist of a young man by Rembrandt, and that was screwed into the wall, and it was sort of too much effort to get it, so they didn't take it. The other ones they could just take off the wall and bust everything up. So they didn't take that. The landscape with an obelisk, that was on the back side. There was a painting called Chez Tortoni, which interestingly was on the first floor, right? There's the basement where the guards were, the first floor, and then the stuff that was mostly stolen was second floor. So this was first floor, which is sort of odd, and we'll get to that. And then there were 5 sketches by Degas, and I'll show them to you, but they're just pencil sketches. I mean, this isn't like Da Vinci stuff. This is just sketches. And then there was the Chinese vase, the ku or the gu, and then there was an eagle from Napoleon. So the eagle from Napoleon has an interesting story. So in total, she spent $142,000, and like I said, they're worth, pick your number, priceless stuff. So this is the Chez Tortoni by Manet, and that's the landscape with obelisk. And they thought that was a Rembrandt, but it's not. So here's the finial. So this was the eagles on top of a staff. Yeah, Yeah, exactly like that. So when Napoleon was in a battle, he was surrounded by the 1st Regiment. That's the one. And then they could tell where he was on the battle. Remember, he was a short guy anyway, so they needed to find him. So here's the really interesting story. This guy, 2 years ago, came forward. He was a jeweler on Washington Street in Boston. And right after the theft, this guy named Bobby Donati came to him and said, I have an eagle. Can you buy it from me? And you can see what Paul said. Jesus, Bobby, why didn't you just steal the Mona Lisa? How are you going to sell this stuff? Everybody knows what it is. It's all over the papers. Nobody's going to buy this stuff. It's hot. So in my book, I make that somebody buys the eagles from Boston College, which is where I went to school, because it's the BC Eagles. So that was just my little having fun with it. But that's the only items that's been cited. Nothing else has ever been cited.
What happened to Bobby?
Huh?
Where is it now?
I'll tell you.
What happened to Bobby? Why wasn't he now?
We'll talk about that too. So this is the short gallery. So you come down the hall, take a right and a right. Short room. So the finial was up in back here. So here's the banner, and the staff was behind here, and the eagle was up behind there. So that's where that was. And this is a very small room. It's like a walk-in closet size. It's really tiny. And they had to go a long way to get there. And the sketches were in behind one of these boards. So there's what, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 boards. So for some reason, they went to the 6th board and took 5 sketches. They didn't take them from here, 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 here. They went to this one. Like, okay. So these are the sketches by Degas. Those are the first 2. And then there's this one, and this one. So like I said, I mean, they're Degas, they're wonderful, but this is not something you'd go in and say, let's see, what am I going to steal? I know, I'm going to steal some sketches. That's not first on your list. Yes?
Did they take the frames in the photo?
No, these were just sort of tacked onto the board. Not tacked, but sort of just held in place.
How about the 3 main ones? Did they take the frames or did they?
No, they didn't take any frames. Well, they moved a frame, but I'll tell you what they did with that later. But yes. So the real question is, why was this stuff taken? So when I was doing, did any of you do genealogy? So when you find like a little link and you go down a rabbit hole and you're like, God knows where you are and you're just following stuff. So to do research for this presentation of my book, I kept following things and I came across this thing. And this guy had a copy of this, which is the 1984 guidebook to the gardener. Amazing. Well, no, it gets better. So if you go to a page, so this is the description of the Dutch room. Look at what's pictured. What was stolen? Those 2 things were stolen. They were in the guidebook and taken. Here's another page from the guidebook. The obelisk. That was taken. So it's almost like somebody had a guidebook and they tore a page out and said, here, you go get this stuff, and you go get this stuff, and we'll meet downstairs, and then we're going to steal it all and go home. I've never heard any better explanation of why those things were taken, because they're specific and far apart. You wouldn't go from there way down to there to take the other stuff. Oh, and of the sketches, remember I said there were 5 Degas sketches? Guess which ones were listed in the book? I found this thing. It was like some Reddit thing somewhere. But 5 sketches. And then we had that Shea Tortoni. So it's a small thing. So this is the frame back up. And in the guidebook, guess which picture is listed? And that was on the 1st floor in the blue room. So the only things that were taken were stuff that was listed in this guidebook. Now, it was an older guidebook, right? Because the theft took place in 1990, and this was 84. But still, somebody used this, and the stuff can't change. So an 84 guidebook is as good as a 1990 guidebook. So what was not taken? Right? They have 3 floors of stuff. So they don't take, this is the one that was screwed in, that they tried to, but it was just too much work, so they left it. They didn't take this, a Rubens, and they didn't take this by Titian, which is just unbelievably worth Was it the gardener, Pat, had the 4 of the, so the gardener had a thing with the 4 of those. There were 4 commissioned by the King of Spain, and they're gigantic, but they're worth, God knows, $1 billion, more. None of those things were taken. Now this one was big, pretty big, and they only had a Dodge hatchback, but still. So there's the Rembrandt that wasn't taken. This here, behind us here, would be the Dutch room. This is the hallway you go down. The courtyard is here, so you get down here, hung a right, and that's where the short gallery is. So here's some more. It's an interesting story. So there were prior attempts to get into the Gardener, and then there was the theft, and then who done it? Because we actually know who did it. We know who the 2 guys were. And then there's my ending, which I came up with for my book, and we'll get to that last. So a decade before the theft, the FBI came to the head of security at the Gardener and said, "You're going to get robbed." The first presentation I did of this was in the Gardener, Massachusetts Historic Museum. And the director came to me and he said, he's the one who got, another guy came to me in the meeting. He was the head of security. He was in that meeting when the FBI came in. It was really cool, like the people who come forward to this thing. And he's like, yeah, I was there when the FBI said we're going to get robbed. So they did some stuff and changed it all around. They eventually were not robbed, but they had somebody who had tipped them off. 2 months before the theft. So if you know the MFA, the back side faces the Fens. The front side is where the Indian statue is, and that faces Huntington Avenue. So on the back side, 2 cops come up to the back side of the MFA. Hey, we want to come in. We hear there's a disturbance. No, you can't come in. I have to go find my boss. So if you've been around the MFA, you know it's gigantic. It took him like 4 years to find his boss. By the time that he comes back, the guys are gone. So 2 guys tried to get into the MFA 2 months before the theft. The MFA didn't tell the gardener. They didn't tell the cops. They didn't tell anybody. They kept it to themselves. Would have been nice to share.
Why did they do that?
Because they didn't think it was a problem. 2 weeks before the theft, on Palace Road, a guy is getting beat up by 2 other guys. He comes up to the side door, hits the button, let me in, I'm getting beat up. Security guard goes, no, I can't let you in. He walks away from the door, gets in the car with the 2 guys, and they drive away. Dry run, trying to see what the reaction was. The night before, so St. Patrick's Day is the 17th. The theft actually took place on the 18th. The morning of the 17th, so 24 hours ahead, a whole bunch of people went into the Gardener. And we know because we have the video. When the fake cops stole the paintings, they took the one video that was of them driving up and getting in. There was no backup. But the night before, they didn't care about that one. So we have this. And the FB, if you go to that site, you can see the whole video. It's really cool. Now, you have to have the room extremely dark. It's hard to see. I have some screenshots, but it's very cool to watch this thing. So this is 24 hours before the theft. I can. There you go. You're welcome. Okay? You got it? Good. But like I said, get the room really dark, get your pupils like gigantic. So here's the security desk. When I said they came in and somebody was sitting behind the desk, here's the desk. This is an older guard. It's March 17th, 47, so it's 24 hours ahead. He was not on duty the night of the theft. He called in sick. They had a replacement. He never did anything. He just wasn't on duty that night. He was sick. So he's standing in front of the desk. So here's the rest of the desk, and here's the other guard. And he's on the phone. There's a button here to let, remember I said the cops, when they came in, he got buzzed in. The buzzer to let them in is here. The buzzer for the Boston police is over there. That's why they pulled him out. They didn't want him hitting the buzzer. Okay? That's him. And his name is Richard Abath. So I gave this presentation a couple of weeks ago, and a woman sends me an email, and I called him Richie. She said, "Why did you call him Richie?" I'm like, "Why does she care? What is she interested in?" I said, "Well, I just felt like it, so I did it." She said, "Well, he goes by Rich. So call him Rich from now on." And she knew that because her best friend knows him. And because he's still alive. He lives up in Vermont or Hampshire. But it's just, like I said, interesting who comes to these sort of things. So that's Rich. So here we are. So there's 4719. This is a couple of seconds later. So 4810, here's a car coming this way on Palace Road, the wrong way. Right? Palace Road is one way that way to the fence. This guy's going the wrong way. 4839, the older guard walks away. Abath is still back here. Here's the car. Now it's parked. The lights are out. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a person there. You can see his legs. So he's left the car, and he's going here towards that side entrance. Okay? And here's 4915. Here's Rich Abath. He's hitting the buzzer to let somebody in. People are getting into the Gardener the day before the theft. At least one so far.
Was that because it was closed? I mean,
Well, it was 1 a.m.
Oh, 1 a.m.
Right, it's 1 a.m., so yeah.
Right.
So now here's a couple of seconds later, 4925. Somebody's walking away from the Gardener to that car. The car starts up. This is a second person going into the museum, right? Because he's in the car. I say he, I don't know, but I just keep saying he. But, right, he's in there sitting in the car, and there's somebody else over here. Who's that? Where did he come from? Because if you watch this, the lights don't go on until the one guy gets in. It's not like the interior lights go on, off. It's just on, off once. And so 4948, this guy is in, and here's the button, and Richard Abath has let him in. Well, but at 53, now remember that was 49 something. At 53, here's a guy walking in. That's not Abath. He doesn't have the long hair. He's not the older guy, right? So this is somebody else, and then remember, there's somebody in the car still. So it's just like, what's going on? 5310, somebody's coming out of the museum. Somebody's still in the car, and this guy's inside. That's three. 1, 2, 3 people in and out of the museum the night before. At least that's how I count it. 5330, the car drives away without this guy, because the inside lights didn't go on again, if you watch the whole thing. So it's just like they drop people off, it's just confusing as hell. So one of the theories is that the guy who was going in and out was Larry O'Brien, the Assistant Director of Security. This is the guy who entered. This is Larry O'Brien. And to me, my naked eye, they don't look the same. The jacket's different. He's sort of, very gaunt. This guy, you can see, is different. The hair's different. He's got like this pullback. This is pretty short. So it's not the same guy, I don't think. The theory is that the people who went in, those three, forgot their wallet or their keys or whatever, or paperwork or whatever. They were all workers. I don't know. We don't know.
They said they worked there.
Well, they don't know who these guys are. They don't know who this guy is.
Well, that's why the guy buzzed him in, because they said they worked there?
No, we don't know why he buzzed him in. He just did. Now, the one thing we do know, somebody came forward and said they know who this guy is, but they're not going to say until he's dead. So somebody knows, as always, somebody knows something, but they just haven't come forward. Okay, so here's the night of the theft. There's the partiers, remember the kids on the street. There's the hatchback that was sitting idling. There's the 2 security guards. And then there's the theft. And then there's the discovery when the next shift comes on at 7 a.m. So here's the partiers. We know who they are. They gave statements. The cops were like, it was drunk college kids. All they saw was the patch. They didn't see faces. They saw the car, which was great, but they couldn't identify the guys. So they really weren't that much help. But, we know who their names are. I mean, I just found this stuff on the internet. It's there. It's nothing. One of the guy works at Harvard now or something. So there's that. So this is a picture of an '88 red Dodge Daytona hatchback. That's the car the night before. So, I'm no car expert, but this looks kind of like this. I mean, this isn't a Chevy Corvette Stingray. It's not a minivan. It's not a station wagon. It's not a Lincoln Continental. It sort of looks like a hatchback to me. So, to me, it sort of looks like the same car. And this car is important, and we'll find out in a second why. Now, the security guards did have one thing. They saw the two guys, right? They know the guys who pushed them up against the wall and did all that. So they were... I forgot. So this is Richie Abath. I'm sorry, Rich. So he was in a band called Uriah. They threw concerts in Alston Brighton in their basement. It was $5, come in, drink all you want, and listen to his band. So that's him in the middle there. The second guard who was on that night was Randy Hestat. He was called in at the last minute, has nothing to do with anything, totally cleared. He just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So just, summary of the theft, 2 men, security guard, spend an hour taking stuff, and then they're out. So the robbery was that time period. The theft was discovered the next morning when so they didn't know if they were going to find bodies or the thieves or the theft was still going on. So they were pretty scared about what was going to happen. And here's a schematic of the Gardener. So here's the side entrance. Here's Palace Road. Here's the Dutch room, here's the short gallery, and on the first floor, here's the blue room where that Chez Tortoni was. So here's the Gardener the day after the theft. Here's the side entrance. This is Palace Road. The car sat idling down this way and went down there. And this is what the side entrance looks like now. I took this one, Pat and I went there. It's just, this was her private entrance. When she lived there, this is where she went. You can't get into it from the inside, but this was her entrance, and then she'd go upstairs. Okay, so Abath did a couple of screwy things the night of the theft. So he went into that blue room at 12:27, and we know this because they had sensors all around the museum, and it could tell when somebody passed a certain spot. So that's how they know where he was. So at 12:27, he went into that blue room where Chez Tortoni was. At 12:53, he went back there. And at 1:04, he's the one who opened. Remember I said, the door opens, the light flashes. He's the one who did that. He said he was checking the security system. Why you would check the security system at 1 a.m. instead of signaling the guys to come up, who knows? But he just said he was checking the security system. So I was like, okay, fine. Here's the thing. Those 2 cops never went in this blue room. The only one in that room was the security guard. And he went in twice. So how was it stolen if the 2 cops didn't do it? And he was tied up in the basement. How did they take it? Did he grab it and leave it by the security front desk and they took it from there? Don't know. He denies he ever had it. He has no great wealth. He's passed tons of lie detector tests. They really don't think he was anything but, and the woman who said her friend knew somebody said that my characterization of him was right. He was innocent and just incompetent and in the wrong place at the wrong time, but he didn't have anything to do with the theft, according to her. So here's just a quick timeline that I took you through. So they go in, they tie everybody up, they take them to the basement. Then for a while, they just keep going back and forth between the Dutch room and the short gallery, back, forth, back, forth. Then all of a sudden, there's 15 minutes of no movement in the museum. Nothing. What were they doing? Were they playing cards? Did they have to go to the bathroom? What were they doing? We don't know. But then all of a sudden, it starts up again. Then it stops again. Then it starts up again. No explanation for what happened. And then at 2:46, Gone Baby Gone, which is, by the way, a really good movie directed by Ben Affleck, really with his brother in it. Really good movie. Anyway, so here's sort of a schematic with a timeline here. So here's the side entrance. They go in, take them to the basement, come up here, back, forth, over here, back, forth, back down, out. And here's where the gaps are in terms of their whole trip through the museum. So we really don't know why there were gaps. No idea what they were doing. They tested all of the sensors around. Everything was working fine. They don't know why it didn't work. So when I said they knew where everybody was, the one thing the cops didn't know was there were 2 printouts of the tape of those sensors. They took one tape, they didn't know about this one. So you can see what it says. 318, 155, someone's in the Dutch room, investigate. Yeah, no kidding, but there's nobody there to see it. So we do have this tape of when all the movement, when the gaps were and everything. So there's Richard in the basement. So some of the issue is, does he look like somebody who's been tied up for 6 to 7 hours? He doesn't look in great distress, right? He doesn't look disheveled. He just sort of looks like he's been sitting there for about 10 minutes. So that's sort of the issue is, he opened a door, he was in the blue room, he's sitting there like this, but he says he had nothing to do with it. And, who knows? He did or he didn't, but he doesn't look particularly distressed to me. I would look a lot worse after 6 or 7 hours.
The tape off his hair.
Yeah. Well, or did they tape him up at the end? Remember, the 2 guards were separated.
Right.
Maybe he was helping them. Remember I said they went downstairs at one point to check on them before they left? Maybe that's when they taped them, because the other guard couldn't tell. So we don't know. So what do we know about the thieves? We know people were in and out the night before, but we don't know who they were. We know the car, and we know the timeline from the security system, but the guards were able to provide sketches. So there's the sketches. So here's one guy, sort of taller and thinner, glasses, mustache, no mustache. Here's a second guy, he was the shorter of the 2, mustache, no mustache. So we have pretty decent descriptions, or that. Here's the actual descriptions that they gave of the 2 guys. The thing is, you have to remember, the guards were under enormous stress, right? They're tied up, they're handcuffed, people are stealing. So they're going to remember different things. Eyewitness accounts are historically horrible. So they're going to remember different things. But Abath said thief number 1 had gold square glasses. And the other guard said no glasses. Thief number 2, Hested, said he had a fake mustache. Abath said none. Hested said that one guy had chubby cheeks and a Boston accent on the other one, and Abath said nothing, which is okay, yes.
What was the IQ of the guards?
Based on what they were paid, not very high. I wouldn't think so. But they're just sort of, and they weren't trained to identify people, right? They were just off the street. So, cops and other people are trained how to look at people and see things and remember it. These guys weren't trained. So even if they were intelligent, they were scared. So but you'd think you remember glasses or a mustache. So who done it? Was it an inside job? Was Richard Abath running this thing? Was it some freelance art thieves like Pierce Brosnan in the Thomas Crown affair? World guy, steals it. Was it like some oil sheiks or something? Was it the mafia? Or was it just a couple of jamokes? Just a couple of guys? So here's Richard Abath now. He still likes that haircut. I don't think it's good on him, but whatever. But he's had no sign of wealth after anything. Passed tons of lie detector tests. He was picked up. So here's another. So who was it said knew Brian McDevitt? One of the other women. When she came in, she said she went to high school with this guy in Swampscott, Mass., which is where my wife comes from. So he was an art thief. He had dressed up as a FedEx driver to try and steal some stuff prior to this. He lived on Beacon Hill the night of the theft. That's where his residence was. But right after that, he left Boston. He told his girlfriend he got paid money to steal the Gardner paintings, then he had to leave town, and he went to LA and became an unsuccessful screenwriter, and then just vanished. But he didn't do it. I mean, nobody's going to think this is either of those 2 guards. Right? There's nothing that says this is what the guy was. So he really had nothing to do with it, even though he was the type and could do it, but he didn't do it. Then there's this guy, a guy named Miles Connor, genius IQ. Father was a police chief. He was in a rock band, and he was known for stealing paintings all over the place. So he stole from the Woolworth estate with that guy Bobby Donati. Remember I said the guy who went with the Eagle to try and sell it? Those 2 were friends for a long time. He stole Miles Connor stole a Rembrandt from the MFA. He ran in, took it off a wall, and ran out. But he turned it in so he wouldn't go to jail. That's a pattern. You know that? Yeah. Okay.
I have an acquaintance.
Oh, tell me later. Like I said, I love these connections. So this is him later in life. Now, he cased the Gardener in '74 with Donati. They went in, they checked it all out. I think it was them. They actually got one of those cherry picker trucks, you know, that has the basket that lifts you up, and they parked that next to the Gardener in the middle of the night and went up and like looked at all the windows. It was just unbelievable, and nobody caught them. He was friends with another guy we'll get to, but he was in jail the day of the theft, so he did not do it. Could he have planned it? Absolutely. He had the brains to do it. Then there's this guy, David Houghton. He dated Connor's sister. He visited Connor in prison to say, how do you break in? He held Connor's stolen art and gave it to this other guy, Youngworth, and we'll get to him. But he weighed 350 pounds. He did not go in as a cop. Neither of the descriptions said, we're looking for somebody who weighs 350. Normal-sized guys. So he wasn't it. But he died, he died pretty soon after, so we can't talk to him. That's also going to be a pattern. So here's this guy named Louis Royce. Remember I said a decade before the theft, somebody went into the FBI and said, you're going to get robbed? He was the snitch. He went to the FBI and said, you're going to get robbed. Well, he was a longtime art thief. He slept in the Gardener as a kid. So he came from a very bad home. He had to get away from an abusive father. When he didn't want to stay at his house, he would go into the Gardener in the afternoon, go up to the 4th floor, because nobody was up there, go under a table where there was a tablecloth, and sleep there. And then in the morning, he'd get up, use the bathroom, leave. So he slept there all the time. So he knew the Gardener inside and out. He owned a art studio, and he fenced stolen art. You know, bad guy. He robbed a house and then gave the paintings back to avoid jail. Second time this has happened with these group of folks. So then we have the sketches from the security guards. What do you think? Think we got the guys? So he's George Jamaica Plain Ricefelder, and he's Lenny the Mutt DiMuzio. Right, sort of typical mafia stuff. So again, to my naked eye, that's not bad for guys who look like they could have done this thing. So here's George, smiling, waving as he's being led off to jail. Guess what kind of car he owned? And he worked, remember I told you to remember Palace Road and TRC Auto Electric? Guess where he worked? TRC Auto Electric. His sister-in-law said she saw that Shea Tortoni on his bedroom wall after the theft. They never found it, but she said she saw it. Unfortunately, George died of a cocaine overdose a year after the theft. And his body was discovered by a guy named Carmelo Merlino. Carmelo Merlino owned TRC Auto Electric and ran a cocaine ring for the Patriarchas. And this guy dies of cocaine, and his boss discovers the body. Kind of suspicious to me. I'm just saying, right? And then here's Lenny the Mutt. He worked at TRC Auto Electric. He disappeared a year after the theft and was found. It took them a while to find him. He must have not smelled very good, but they found him in the trunk of his car. He was killed by a guy named David Turner who worked at TRC Auto Electric. So the two guys who went in, dead within a year-ish. So here's David Turner. He was in Florida the day of the theft, but you know what, remember I said somebody had chubby cheeks? Sort of a little bit, you know, if he's smiling. Somebody also said that they thought he had slanty eyes. And, you know, squinting he sort of does. But he was in Florida the day of the theft. He couldn't have done it. But he worked at TRC Auto Electric. And he's the one who allegedly killed Lenny the Mutt, because Lenny owed him money and he wasn't happy about that, so he killed him. So here's TRC Auto Electric today in Dorchester, owned by Carmelo Merlino. Like I said, it was a front for a cocaine ring. And there's Carmelo. Handsome guy, I think. And any parent would love to have their daughter come home and say, Dad, I'm marrying this guy. Oh my God. So he was convicted of, he was an underboss, he was convicted of robbing an armored car. He exchanged a painting for jail time. Where have we heard that before? He was caught on a wire after the theft, talking about the Gardner theft. So, you can sort of picture George and Lenny go in and steal. They get paid a few $1,000s. They come back to TRC Auto Electric. They're bragging about what they did, but they don't have the paintings. Carmelo wants the paintings because he knows what they're worth. He has Lenny kill one guy, and he kills the other guy with cocaine. Pretty reasonable to me. But remember, I write fiction books, so take what I say with a grain of thought. And he's passed away now, and he died in jail. So this is everybody who worked at TRC: George, Lenny, Bobby, David Turner, David Houghton, and he's the guy who was wearing the wire that caught Carmelo bragging about the thing. So TRC is like all over this place. So if the two guys who went in, we know them, right? This is like pretty common knowledge. Who actually planned it? Was it Whitey? Right? Remember, Whitey was in that area. How Whitey made money was he took 15% of every crime that happened in his area. He also stole $1 million lottery ticket. He also took over a liquor store for some people because he just wanted to. That was his thing. So I'm not sure he really did it. However, I have a good story. So 3 or 4 years ago, I was in the hospital with a heart thing. And my roommate was a nice guy. He was on the other side of the curtain. He and I started talking. He's like, what do you do? I said, I'm retired, and I'm writing a book about the Gardner theft. He starts laughing at me. Like, John, why are you laughing at me? He goes, I can't tell you. I'll have to kill you. It's like, okay, thanks, John. I mean, he was kidding. But it's like, thanks, John. What really? Why are you laughing? He says, I can't tell you. Okay, fine. So, we go a couple more days. We keep talking. I keep asking why he's laughing. He said, I can't tell you. I get to my last day there. I go around the curtain. I said, all right, John, you got to tell me, why are you laughing at me? He said, well, I started as a bouncer, and then I was a bartender, then a cook, then sort of ran a restaurant. Then I owned a restaurant with Whitey Bulger. A legit restaurant, not like a hangout, not like the Triple O Lounge, but a real one, real restaurant. And he said, I am telling you, Whitey did the theft. Seriously? He goes, I'm telling you, that's who did it. It doesn't seem to be a Whitey thing. And if he had these paintings, would he have gone to wherever it was, San Diego? And when they found him, he had money in the wall and he had guns, but he didn't have paintings. So something would have happened. I don't think he did it, but so there's lovely pictures of Whitey. Do any of you remember the Valhalla? So the Valhalla was a boat going out for swordfish, left Gloucester, went across the Atlantic loaded with guns for the IRA. Guess who supplied the guns? Whitey and another guy. When they got there was a turncoat there. They confiscated the guns. The boat comes all the way back. Everybody on the boat gets arrested. So one theory is Whitey took the paintings to give to the IRA, to sell for money, to go buy guns. It's kind of convoluted, but it's a good story, and why not? Why would somebody who's already pre-sold it just take those? There was better stuff to take than 5 Degas sketches.
That's what that collector wanted.
Okay.
That's the specialty of the art collector.
Okay, could be. I mean, nobody knows. Everybody's dead. You can't tell. But I do believe Steve Kirchin. So here's Bobby Donati. He was a driver for this guy, Vinny the Animal Ferrara. And so, I don't know if any of you noticed, but this was how I had to keep track of all the Mafia guys. So here's the Angiulos, and here's Garenti, and here's all these guys here, and then here's another family and all their interconnections. It was just like a spider's web. But that was the only way I could keep track of all these names. It was just too many of them. And I haven't even put up here all the guys I've got. So anyway, so he got Case the Gardener. He stole paintings with him. He worked at, of course, TRC Auto Electric. He was the driver. The night before the theft, or 2 nights before the theft, in Revere, in a bar, he had 2 complete Boston police uniforms in a paper bag, and he was showing them off. Here, you want to see my copy? Do you know how hard it is to get police uniforms? This is not like going to the Salvation Army and picking one up. Those places are registered. They have to keep track of everything. You just don't get police uniforms. He had 2. One for somebody tall, one for somebody short. Now, unfortunately, he went to sell that eagle, right? Unfortunately, Bobby died. So a year after the theft, that's part of the reason I went to Revere, he was bludgeoned and almost decapitated and stuffed in the trunk of his Cadillac. So part of my tour was where did they find the body and where did he live and all this other stuff. So it was a lot of fun. So he's dead. So the 2 guys who went in and the guy with the uniform, gone within a year and a half. So where's the stuff? So there's this guy named Bobby Guarente who hung out at TRC Auto Electric. He was a friend to David Turner. His widow said he gave 2 of the stolen pieces to another guy named Bobby Gentile, and we'll get to him. A mobster said Guarente told him some of the paintings were in a slab of a house in Orlando, Florida, so they could be in Florida. But he's unfortunately dead, so we can't ask him. So here's Bobby Gentile. He's the guy who got the paintings from Guarente. So remember I said I went to Gardner, Massachusetts to give this presentation? The director came up to me and he said he got the phone call about this. So somebody called anonymously the Gardner Mass Museum instead of the Isabella. And they said, my neighbor across the street, I think he has all the paintings in his backyard. So the director of the Gardner Mass Museum called the FBI. They came out, went down to Middleton, Connecticut, tore this guy's house apart, tore his shed apart. Oh, Manchester, Connecticut, sorry. And they found a false floor under his shed. They found a 1990 newspaper article about the theft. And they found a list of all the paintings and stuff with a street value. They didn't find the stuff, but they found a list of what it maybe could be sold for. So like I said, it's really interesting who shows up in these little presentations. He's dead too. He's the one he just died recently. They didn't all die horrible deaths. So I mentioned William Youngworth a couple of times. He stole paintings with Miles Connor. He had Connor's art and he sold it out for him while he was in jail. He was convicted a bunch of times. He owned an antique store that he stole stolen stuff from. Now he showed a Boston Herald reporter what he purported to be one of the paintings. And that reporter scraped some oil, some of the chips from it, and they got it tested, and it was the right time period, but not one of these paintings. So he tried to scam, trying to get the reward, saying, oh, I've got the paintings, but he didn't. But it was a good try. Yeah, and he was more connected with those guys. Oh, Joseph Murray was the other guy who did the gun thing with Whitey. He was a Charlestown criminal. So then there's this other guy, Jim Marks. So he bragged, talk about not being bright, he bragged that he had 2 of the paintings. So he and Bobby Guarente were up in Maine together. And they said, you know what, let's go down to Revere and see a movie. We'll drive 2 separate cars. So they drive from Maine, they go down to Revere. Jimmy goes to, this is his door. This light is unscrewed. As he goes to put his key in the door, Guarente puts 2 shotgun blasts in the back of his head and kills him for bragging that he had 2 of the paintings. And other people tried to kill him before that. And cops saw Guarente, Gentile, and some other mobsters at a restaurant. You're getting the picture here? These guys are all connected. They all know each other, besides TRC. I'm sorry. So this is the Dutch room today. So that's where the lady and gentleman in black was. That's the storm of the Sea of Galilee, where it used to be. So there's where the goo used to be. There was the home of the Vermeer, and the backside was the home of the obelisk. So that's what it looks like now. So where's the stuff? So it could be with Bobby Donati in Revere, right? He had the stuff, he had the eagle, he dies a year later, he puts it in a basement, a shed, an attic, a porch, a closet, whatever, and then he gets killed. And he never tells anyone where the stuff is. So maybe it's in Revere. I like Revere. It could be in Maine. It could be with Bobby Guarenti up at his shack up there. It could be in Connecticut, right? Right? I said Manchester, Connecticut. Maybe they just didn't dig in the right place. Maybe it's somewhere else in his house. There was another mobster, a Philadelphia mobster, so it could have been there, or it could have been down in Orlando in the slab. So where's the stuff? So my reasonable guess, Donati paid the other two guys that went in. They came out, they gave him the stuff, he paid them, he hid the stuff, and he's killed in a gang war, and the stuff is in a wall somewhere. So I wrote my book, so I had to have a fictional ending. So my wife grew up in Swampscott, so I drove up and down the Revere Beach Parkway, the Linway, forever. So I know all sorts of places. Oh, so these are my books. We're going too long. Oh, they're great Christmas presents. That's my marketing effort. So here's Uncle Louie. So my main character is a guy named Uncle Louie, who is a friend of, an uncle to one of my wife's friends, and he's really a mafia guy, and his nose is over here, and he's all this. But that's sort of not as big a version of my guy. And so this is it's not the Revere Beach Parkway. Where is it? The Linway? North Shore Road. So this place, I used to drive by it, and it was called Doc Kagan's Auto Clinic, and they had a picture of him dressed up as a doctor, and I just thought it was the greatest little place. So when I had to pick a place for where I said the paintings were in my book, I said they're in the pit down here where they used to change the oil, and that's where he finds them. So that's my fake ending. So these are my other books. This one's on Nantucket. This starts my character. This is look-alike women who conduct frauds on people in the Boston North Shore. My next book is going to be about Charles Ponzi, 1920 Boston, and my main character's grandparents get all their money stolen by Charles Ponzi. So I sort of like the history sort of stuff. Thank you. So I do all these covers. It's the thing called Canva. It's pretty easy. I don't think they're too horrible. I just like the black and white on that one. So that'll be out sometime this year. So as I said, as I replied to, sorry, don't know your name, one great source if you want to have facts, remember I'm a fiction guy, is this book by Steve Kirchen, Boston Globe, Spotlight team, Pulitzer Prize winner, worked on the Catholic Church thing. This is sort of his deal now. I've talked to him a couple of times. Somebody in one of my events, he sent me an email after I did it. And he said, my dentist was in your audience. And she said, you did a nice job, and I wanted to thank you for pitching my book. So I pitched his book again for him. But I thought he was going to be here, but oh well. There's a great Netflix series by Mike Barnacle's kids. He used to work for the Globe too. He's on Morning Joe. He's on Morning Joe now. Great thing. Four episodes, great deal. I'm on Facebook. My books are on there. My PowerPoint, you can see it. Oh, this is all the other places I'm going. And kiddingly, I'm going to Las Vegas. No, not really. I'm like going to be like Cher or somebody, like have a standing thing. No, I'm not. These are the next ones I'm going to. Not that you want to see this again, but whatever. And that's the end, and thank you very much.